while. I know it's been a little while, but I'm finally able to that Faces of Loki video. I've been doing, holding on for a while. Figured I needed to get caught up. So this one I will say is a lot, primarily UPG. But we're talking about the aspect, or Faces of Loki, that is the bringer of chaos. Okay, so first of all, where the idea of Loki and chaos being connected comes from is not so much the stories and things he does, because even though some odd things tend to happen around Loki, it's usually more of something's messed up, he's going and fixing it, or something to that effect, and it really applies more to the trickster side. But as far as for the bringer of chaos, where the majority of that idea comes from, is just his place in Ragnarok. Excuse me. So one thing, the reason I say it's UPG though is depending on which part of the lore you're reading, prosetta, poetic, whatever, that's going to depend on that. It tells you different things about Loki's actual place in it. Um, we have in one version, one of those is telling us that he is going and he's leading the way to Ragnarok after he breaks out of his chains, and then the other, uh, he's just one leader of many platoons basically coming out, because it is an all-out war. So he's not the one driving the ship in that version, but he's leading a whole bunch of other riders and fighters coming from Helheim out. Hela has a group coming out from Helheim, and then of course the ones that are riding on the ship, and then search riders from Muspel. But then in other tales, when it's told later, it has Loki just essentially being leading the way and driving the ship. But either way, we know that when the chains are broken and he's freed, that is at Ragnarok. And we know that he does play a key role there in the whole battle. He's leading a lot of the fighters, whether it's all of them or just a platoon. We know he's involved. And that's where a big part of the chaos aspect comes from for most people, because there's not a lot of chaos mentioned outside of that. Uh, so anyway, the point is most of this will be UPG because of that lack of stories that we have. Um, kind of get the feel of Loki as the bringer of chaos, even though in the lore it's kind of wishy-washy. It's however you interpret it. But in personal experience, most of us do deal with that. Most of us do tend to get some form of chaos from him. He is the chaos bringer, and I don't want to say we welcome it, but we definitely don't really want to shun it either, because the chaos is also needed, and that's what we're looking at here. So with the bringer of chaos, it's not chaos for the sake of chaos. That is one thing we will always, always say here, especially. I'm always going to push that. And you have so many people that claim to be Loki and it claim to be, chaos magic or whatever chaos, and they're not doing chaos. They're doing claiming chaos as an excuse to be an ass. That's all it is. Because actual chaos is the balance to order. Actual chaos is not for no reason. And I know to some that doesn't make sense, but even in science, that's the case. So when things are chaotic, we got to put them back in order. When things are stagnant, we have to shake it up a bit to make it move again. That's chaos. Chaos has a reason or has an impact. It has a benefit. It makes a change. You know, being an ass for the sake of being an ass is not chaos because there is no effective change afterwards. So, all you edgelords out there, get your shit together. Now, in our lives, especially, yes, those of us who are Lokian, we deal with that aspect of Loki quite a bit. And it is usually in those times when there are things going on that we need to get away from. Now, I've mentioned the calm and the chaos before in a previous video. Because he does, he can help you find your way through chaos. But sometimes, he has to stir the pot a little bit to get us to move, to get us what we need to do, and get us changing the way that we need to. So essentially, I say, for example, nature. In nature, you could say that a hurricane or tropical storm or tornado is chaotic, but the order of nature and weather and climate made that chaos happen. And when it is gone, things have cleared out. And that's kind of the chaos we're dealing with here. So, for the chaos bringer, there are many examples how he can bring the chaos. And especially, usually, it's more personal issues. But then there are times, like I've said in a previous video, that it's the other people around us, and we tend to be involuntary catalysts because that is what our patron is. It just happens. It's like he pops in us and we walk in and, oh, see that little fire they've been having going? We're going to make it burn and we're going to make it visible because they're going to change it and fix it or it's going to burn down. That's his kind of chaos. It's not that he's stirring the pot to make it happen. It's this is a problem and now we're making it more obvious that it's a problem because this is your last chance to fix it. That's the kind of chaos we're dealing with. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go refresh my coffee. Okay, sorry about that. I decided to just finish the half cup I had and just get me a little extra water while we're at it. So, again, bringer of chaos. So if you look at Ragnarok, it is not, again, chaos for the sake of chaos is not a thing. If it is doing it just for the sake of doing it, it is not truly chaos. If you look at Ragnarok, this is a tale of things that were needing changed, and they did. Um, or you can look at it from the cycles of nature, whereas everything burns down, everyone dies. Not even the gods make it out. And when this happens, there are the couple of children, humans, gods, have their children, their two people set aside, hidden safely, and also Balder. Where Ragnarok's done, they come out and they rebuild everything. And they make an agreement to make sure that they do it better than their predecessors did. So it really is that ending and bringing about change for the better. That again, that's what chaos is. It is chaos in the sense that, I mean, everything's burning. You got the Bifrost is on fire because Surge people step on it. It lights up, and they're his flaming sword. People burning. There's people killing each other. It's just all out what would be chaos. But it's happening because it is ending something that is time to end, and then the new comes in. And so that is the kind of chaos we're talking about. Now, in personal lives, we have many situations where he'll do this. Um, Say, you have a job and there are things going on that are not conductive either for you personally or just for the business as a whole, things that aren't going well, or those little things that get kind of shoved away and ignored, but they're just not right. And then suddenly those problems start getting bigger. Those problems start being more obvious and they're in your face, and it gets to the point that you just cannot ignore it. And then in those cases, that for some of us, again, this is all UPG and personal experience, that is where the chaos happens because it's forcing us to make a move. Either it's on a personal level of, okay, you gotta get the hell out of Dodge, or you're going down with the ship, or it's one of those, this is terrible and someone's got to do something about it. That can happen in organizations, it can happen in jobs, it can happen in schools, it can happen in everyday life. In a way, even things like rallying against the racist and um, anti-LGBTQ, like those that are going for and attacking minorities, in a way, fighting and standing against them is also part of that because it's making it noticed. And it gets kind of crazy sometimes, but it doesn't, things don't tend to change. We know this throughout history, not just Norse, even here in our own country, here in the US, things tend to not change until it gets bad enough that somebody does something and it gets bad, it gets chaotic, it gets crazy, and aha, now we're noticing, and now we either change it or it's going to get worse and the fight will continue. That's the kind of chaos that Loki brings. That happens organizationally a lot when things aren't going, let's say things are hidden that are not being done the way they're supposed to, or things being done that are not supposed to be done. Um, and Loki will step in and make it more obvious that it's happening. And kind of give that nudge. Um, for some of you, those are not okay and not um, pagan. You may call it just simply karma or God, but, but we're looking at it from the aspect of Loki because again, I try to keep it where these are things you can apply in life, that, regardless of your faith. So whether it be fate, universe, Loki, what we have happen is these things suddenly come out into the open. Suddenly people start noticing and it grows and it gets more and more noticeable until we got to do something about this. Or again, if you don't do something about it, it will get big enough, it's in your face, and it's like, bam, okay, it's got to be done or we're going to sink. We've had that in organizations where people here and there, you might hear that they might be doing something wrong, but there's no proof. And then you hear more people and more people and more people, and then suddenly, boom, there's public proof, and we got to nip it in the bud, or we're going to be taken down with them because of what they're doing. That happens in organizations a lot. I will say, from the Locayan perspective, um, especially those of us who are called for more um, clergy or uh, teaching, lead any kind of leader position. Um, for a lot of us, if we are sent somewhere and end up somewhere unexpectedly, it's usually because there's something going on and we don't know it. We're all happy, like, oh, cool, this is going to be a new cool thing. And then we get there and it's, here we go again. So if we find ourselves, a lot of us, me personally, I definitely have. I know a few others. My dearest friend, brother in faith, has had it happen as well. A lot of us deal with it, and it's where again when we'll be trying to say, well, what, we magically end up with a job. That's what happened with me here recently. You just literally out of nowhere, boom, got a job, got a new job. Sounds great, and you get in there, and then suddenly, hmm, that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. And keep your mouth shut, and you do your thing, and you just go about your business. You don't say nothing. You don't do nothing, and then suddenly they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the problems go until you're like, I gotta say something, and then you go and you say something to whoever's in charge of whatever job, organization, etc. And if they fix it, great. Usually, by the time we get there, they don't. It's a situation where they want to wait until it's just falling apart to fix it, and so we'll point it out. Look, this is a problem. This is a problem. And then it doesn't get fixed and it gets worse. And eventually, if it doesn't get fixed, we'll leave. Like, I'm not staying here. And it's like a moral issue. It's like, I'm not staying here where things are not conducive to growth. Things are being done wrong behind people's backs. Like, it becomes a bit of a moral issue. And then we're like, I'm not staying around this. And then when we leave, that's when they suddenly get even worse after we're gone. If they change, great. I'm happy for them. But then they don't, and everything falls apart. Or if it doesn't fall apart, it becomes less good than it was. It becomes less um, hmm, profitable, I guess you could say. And that's just one example. In our personal and spiritual lives, it can be even worse. As in those cases, it is deeply impacting us. And it's usually connected to a lesson. Again, I'll give personal examples. Um, Although I know people have had similar, it's not my story to tell, so I can only share mine, um, unless I've been given permission. So let's say you have a situation where, like I had, where there is toxic relationship of some sort, whether it be lover, family, whatever. In my case, my father, my family, um, not the greatest. Yeah, we had some good times. Everybody has good times once in a while. But then when you're on your way home from a good time and you're being told how, yeah, that was a great time, but that guy might have picked you up and talked to you if you look better, or you want your fat, or yeah, let's get home, and don't you ever embarrass me that way by eating too fast, or the things attached to the good times. Don't make them count, or shouldn't. But then when you're in those situations, we all know, like, you'll stay in it for a long, long time. You will stay in these relationships, again, whatever kind of relationship it is, and we'll stay in it and stay in it and stay in it. And then eventually, if we do leave, something bad happens and we go back, or we're just not used to it, so we go back. Whatever the case, we keep going back. And it keeps, like, it'll be okay for a while, and then it gets worse again. Um, and it's a cycle. And in cases like that, like I said, I make it personal because, again, I can only tell my stories, not other people's. But what happens is each time you go back, it's we understand trauma bond, so that's not what it's about, but the chaos that happens afterwards. And when we leave, things do get crazy. Things do get chaotic. They get hard to deal with, and you're really not sure what to do. And for some of us, again, whether it's Loki or just universe, however you view it, the chaos involved in that is sometimes it's your own inner thoughts and emotions. Sometimes it's literally them coming back, trying to pull you back. Sometimes it's just life in general is not as good as you would like it to be. And the reason it continues and gets worse is because there's the lesson to learn. And the lesson is each time you get out, being out takes longer to get better than it would have the last. It's each time it's a little more crazy to deal with the outside and getting better. But the point of the chaos, you know, the 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 lesson to learn, shall we say, is that if you push through and don't go back to this, then you will eventually start to learn to handle those things and find your way and get better. But if you go back, then when you get out again, you're going to have to go start all over square one. And it could be anything. It could be, it could be that you get out and you don't have money. It could be you get out and you don't have a house. It could be you get out, you've got a place, and suddenly you're evicted. The lesson is to not go back, because that is what put you here to begin with. And there's a lesson involved. And that is Loki's chaos. Those lessons. There's also, put it in little tiny perspective, you're playing with matches, you get burnt. You learn not to play with matches. Some people have to burn themselves 2 or 3 times. But it's that same principle. And you'll get involved. And there's also spiritually speaking. Spiritually, it's just, it can be really weird because, our spirit and emotions, they get all tangled. And what happens? So, again, personal life, you're doing your thing. You're starting to heal, you're starting to do better, and you start sliding and not keeping your agreements that you made with whoever your patrons may be. Now, I'm not saying this from the perspective of, oh my God, that's terrible, you're going to hell. Like, we don't do that. But things start getting hard, and you're not keeping your agreements. things start getting easier if you do keep those agreements. Things start to get easier if you get back to work. And sometimes we have emotional reasons that we're not getting back to work, but I'm really starting to find that those are the times we should really pray to them even harder. Just like, help me get through this, because then not only your personal life starts spiraling, your emotional life starts spiraling, jobs, finances, whatever. And the point of the chaos is, again, make the change or it gets worse. It will not get better without some kind of change. But you also got to make the right change. Definition of insanity, right? Trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, is insanity. And they want us to break out of that. Or, as my son tells me, get out of the loop. That's where we're at right now. And it'll be dumb stuff. And it'll also be teaching lessons, personal lessons, like don't trust people who've already hurt you before. Or don't trust people that benefit from you without them showing some kind of proof they're going to do what they say. You know, if it's, say, a job, and they say they're going to do this, this, and this for you, and you're like, oh, okay, great, and blah, 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 and you go and you do the things, and they've never shown you any proof that they're actually going to do it. Same thing. Or if someone is, you know, you're providing for someone and they are continually not putting forth any effort to make things better. They're not um, they're not trying to do right by you. They're not, you know, you're they benefit from you, and they tell you these things that you you want to hear. So for some of us, the lesson is get proof, especially if it's someone that has some benefit from you. And sometimes that benefit is simply they like to have someone to be better than. They like to have someone to call theirs. They like to have just someone they can control. In jobs, they like to have people that will work for them for little to nothing. So we start having these crazy things come up to make us realize what we're doing. And then sometimes it's simple change. Sometimes as we go, we learn, you know what, that's not right. I'm not dealing with that anymore. I'm done. And then sometimes we get emotionally involved and we cling to it and cling to it and cling to it for God knows how many years. And I'm telling you now, when it's Loki involved, we want to get out of this circle or the loop, as my kid says. I forgot to don't hit return on the loop. Um, what happens is you'll go back to similar situations. They will almost always put you in a similar situation as the last time. You'll continue to get similar situations until you learn to make a different choice. Because again, chaos is the opposite of order. Chaos is what takes order that is still and stagnant and rearranges it. And going back to the same process over and over, going back, going back, going back, that is a pattern of stagnation, a pattern unchanged. And the chaos comes and it knocks you on your ass, it lights a fire under your ass after it knocks you down on it. And you're either going to sit there and suffer or you're going to start changing. And sometimes you don't get real, you have to put in the work to get the guidance because they're not going to tell you, oh, just go do this. They want you to learn, because if you learn the lesson because it's handed to you, you don't maintain or retain the lesson. So like now, I got away. This time I actually quit talking to them for good. This time I actually got a judge to tell them to quit talking to me. Are things the way they need to be? No. I'm going through a lot of the same stuff. No. They gave me a bad car before I left them and it broke down, so I lost my job. So now I'm dealing with other people trying to get me out, trying to get me evicted. And it's the same, similar things, or as my son put it, we always get the same thing, but it's just a little less this time. This time I cut them off. This time I'm not going back. And the weird thing is, I'll get in my head and I'll get crazy. And sometimes I mean, it's like Madeline Kahn and Clue, like the flames in the side of my face. It's like that. But is it crazy and terrible and miserable sometimes? Yes. But at the same time, there's been a change because now it's crazy and it's hard to deal with and it's emotional and you get miserable. But I can also like start counting out things that I'm no longer dealing with. Like when I left my ex-husband. I'm not, you know, he got crazy. Yeah, I got evicted then too. And I made the choice to go back to my dad, so I had to learn that lesson. See the similarities there. But you get away and it's like, I'm not being hit anymore. I'm not being accused of things I'm not doing anymore. I'm not getting clothes bought for me for Christmas and birthdays that are deliberately too small so that I would have to maintain or lose weight to keep them. I'm not getting someone yelling at me because I simply disagreed with them on the news or discussing the news because I literally went to school for that topic. You know, I'm not having someone call me stupid because I believe different than them. I'm not having someone lock me out of the house and tell me I can't get my children out of the house and then trying to call the cops because I'm trying to get into his house. Is it crazy? Yes. Am I still surrounded by people who are causing problems? Yes. And I've learned a lesson. I've also learned I'm not as scared of the new ones because I've dealt with the ones in the past. Oh yeah, that's just my personal story. And how it ties in, I know you're wondering because I do ramble. But how this all ties in is chaos makes change. Chaos teaches lessons. And sometimes that lesson is simply to stand your ground. You know, sometimes that lesson is move on, but don't go backwards. It's all your personal, whatever your personal situation is. I'm one that always just let them do it, let them do it, let them do it, and then I get hurt and I get knocked down and I get in trouble because I just never stood my ground. Now I'm standing up and fighting back. Now I'm standing up and talking. Am I guaranteed to win? Am I guaranteed that they'll stop? No. But I don't hate myself. I don't hate myself for putting myself in a position. I don't hate myself for standing and letting them do it. That's the lesson I learned. And so, as with Ragnarok, that whole battle, life battles, they're made to make a change. That's it. So when we go through this, Loki universe, whatever you want to call it. It did for me. It's Loki. The chaos comes, and you have to step out of it and figure out why it's there and what lesson you can learn from it. If it is something you cannot actually change, then your lesson comes later. What do you do with it after it's done? Do you let it all go? Do you lay down in the fire? Do you die in the battle? Or do you come out and into those fields of green and make an agreement to do better than the last time? That's the lesson. You know, again, it could be spiritual, it could be money, it could be whatever the case is for you. I can almost guarantee you, if you are getting in the same cycles over and over, that's Loki's chaos. And the answer is to figure out why it's happening, or in some cases, what to do after it happens. Either way, look for the patterns because chaos breaks apart patterns. Even in science, something is contained too much, it'll break out. Loki's chaos. The whole universe was formed that way. It's pretty cool. But that is Loki's chaos. As in Ragnarok. It doesn't just burn and that's the end of it. It's not hellfire, we all die, end of story. Actually, again, even in Christianity, that's not the way it is. It says, even in Christianity in Revelation, it's a new heaven and a new earth. Again, where'd they get that idea? Um, and so in the Norse mythology, when we have Ragnarok, at the end of it, the little handful of survivors come out and make an agreement to make a change. And they could not have seen the need for the change so desperately had the chaos not just happened, had they not witnessed and dealt with that chaos and survived it. That's the whole point of Loki as the chaos bringer, to bring that change, to break apart old dead patterns. Like I said, this was all basically personal experience in UPG, but it does apply to many, many aspects in life. It does apply to different paths. You know, anything I do with these faces of Loki, again, for me, it's Loki. I follow the Norse gods, especially Loki and the Odin. I deal with them the most. That's who I believe in, but at the same time, these are different aspects and things in life that can apply to anyone, any faith. So that's why I share these stories and experiences. So that's all I got for this one. And as I say so often to newcomers in my group, welcome to the chaos, darlings. Let's learn what we can together. Y'all have a great night.